Hi, Charles is the Book Sage here, and welcome to another Sunday night live stream. And someday I'll actually have some sort of name for doing these Sunday night things. Oh, hold on. Let me close that browser. And so tonight I'm going to be talking about the Wheel of Time Season 2, Episode 6, Eyes Without Pity. And this was another... As this show continues to be this season, it's a very frustrating experience as someone who's read these books watching this TV show. Episode 6 had some really good stuff in it, some really compelling scenes, particularly Egwene's time here being collared and chained and beginning her training as a damane with the Seanchan, and also Nynaeve and Elyane with one of the Yellow Ajah, Aes Sedai, who's been sort of hiding out there in Falm as well. And all of that is probably easily the best parts of this episode. And we get some of our best scenes in this entire season. And then you kind of juxtapose that with the daytime soap opera, Days of Our Lives nonsense we're getting with Alana and her waters, and Lan, and Moiraine and her sister Anver. All this stuff, all these scenes are entirely made up here for this show because these characters aren't really very present for most of this book. So the show's just made up stuff for them to do. And if there's a trend that should be pretty clear by now is when this show actually sticks to things from the books, it's good. It's interesting and compelling, even when they change stuff around and tweak some things. When they just deviate into territory where they're just making up entire plots for people. Sometimes because, one, they just don't have anything for those characters to do in the book at this point, so they're making things up. Or two, in the case of characters like Rand and Mat, they just, for whatever reason, don't seem interested in either one of these characters' actual book story yet. Maybe next season we'll finally start getting more book-accurate Rand and Mat things happening to them. So again, this very sort of mixed bag, some really good stuff and some really just like soap opera, melodrama, waste of time stuff. So I wanted to go over one particular thing before I dive into the specific events that happen in this episode, because there's one red flag that is like kind of popped its head up, and I'm a bit surprising that this is something that's happening this early in this TV series. Now, if you've watched Game of Thrones, one of the things that became very evident in season 7 and 8 of Game of Thrones was the people making the show stopped caring about the logistics of travel. You suddenly had people in those last 2 seasons covering pretty significant distances. Like Varys goes from Marine to Dorne and back to Marine, like in the span of, it might even be in the same episode. And you have, of course, the greatest run in human history of Gendry running all the way through the snow, all the way back to Eastwatch to get a message that somehow flies all the way down to Daenerys and Dragonmount, and then she somehow flies her dragons all the way up, and you know that whole scene, which is just, I mean, it was cool visually, but just totally absurd. And we have some of that popping up here in season 2, and that worries me that the show is just completely discarding any attempts at showing how long it might take to get from one place to another. Because season 1, they actually took the time to get characters from place to place. But here in this episode, we have Rand is in Cairhien, Mat and Min are in Tar Valon at the very end of episode 5, and Rand's story picks up immediately where episode 5 ends, and in the blink of an eye, Mat and Min are already in Cairhien, in the Foregate. Somehow they've traveled from the Tar Valon to Cairhien while in the span of Rand's little afternoon nap. So, again, and then the Amyrlin seat shows up towards the end, at the end of the episode, also having somehow showed up from wherever she was, gone to the White Tower, gathered 14 sisters, and come to Cairhien, all in the span of a blink of an eye, with Aes Sedai with her in tow, Leandrin, who was just in Tar Valon earlier in the episode, and now is somehow suddenly in Carian as well. And no one's using waygates in these scenes. Last episode, at least, Leandrin took the girls through a waygate to get them to Foam, which explains how she's able to get them that distance that quick. But in this episode, all of a sudden, for some whatever reason, people are just magically all able to arrive in Carian when they were nowhere near it, just moments before, or the episode before. And this episode clearly starts immediately after the end of the previous episode. It's not like any time has passed. And maybe we're meant to just expect some time has passed between Rand waking up from his dream and then seeing Min and Mat in Carian, like immediately after that. I don't know. But as it stands, that worries me that we're getting this, like they're not even attempting to show how these people could get these distances in such a short period of time. Anyway, I just kind of wanted to get that out of the way first before I dived into what actually happened this episode, because there's some really interesting things that I've been waiting for this, things I've been waiting for this TV show to get to since this season started, especially when it comes to Egwene. Because I've been curious as to why the actress who was chosen to play Egwene, and not that I've been disappointed in her at any point up to this point, but she hasn't had a lot to really do in this series yet. So I've been waiting for Egwene to get to Falm, being collared, being a damane, to see this actress and what she has. And hey, Jean, or one sec. And once we got these scenes in this episode, now I can see why this actress was chosen for the role, because she knocked these scenes out of the park. And I don't have any qualms or any questions about whether or not this actress can play Egwene, because after this episode, any doubts I might have had, and they were very minor, were put to bed here. I think she's going to do just fine as Egwene Alvier throughout however much of this story this TV show gets to tell. And if they can spend more time, doing these sort of scenes that are really from the books, like Egwene beginning her damane training here, which is how this episode opens up, and like Egwene, Nynaeve and Elyane figuring out how to rescue her, all that stuff is just far and away some of the best stuff. Not only in this episode, but we had some of the best scenes, I think, in this season so far in this episode. The stuff that was good was really good. So I want to get into what actually happened in this episode now. So our cold open is another not really cold open. It's just a cold open only because they just put it before the opening title. But it's just, we see Egwene being dragged by that chain that was put on the back of her sort of contraption at the end of the last episode. She's being dragged into this chamber. And you hear screams in the background, because this is a building where all the damane, the people basically newly captured and collared, are brought to this same building. And you hear all the other women who had collars put on them being broken in by their Suldam. So there's, throughout these scenes with Egwene and her Suldam, which we learn is Rena, you hear these screams in the distance, and you realize there's other women going through what Egwene is going through in the scene. And I like that touch of hearing those sort of screams in the background, realizing that there's a lot of terrorized women being basically tortured and taught their place and who they are now. And we have Egwene dragged into this room by the chain, and her Suldam is beginning to give her lessons about what it means to be a damane. And Egwene stands up, I think, and tries to punch the Suldam, and then feels the blow herself And the damane is telling her, the sul'dam is telling her, that any pain the sul'dam feels, her damane will feel twice over, even up to including death. So if I die, however painful my death is to me, it'll be twice as painful to you. And she sends pain into Egwene as kind of like lesson number one. And then Egwene is like grabbing at the collar, and she feels pain again, and the sul'dam sends her pain into her again. It's like lesson number two. Damane cannot remove her collar. Only the sul'dam can take it off. Otherwise, it's on there for good. She introduces herself, saying, "My name is Rena," and she wants to know what Egwene's name is. And Egwene, again, is very stubborn, and she's like fighting this and refusing to give in, refusing to really grasp just how dire her situation is here, which isn't, out of bounds, because this is brand new to her. She really doesn't understand the depths of control these collars have. And Rena basically starts channeling pain into her again. It's like every time you disobey, or every time you fight, every time you don't understand that my will is your will, this is what's going to happen to you. And then Egwene finally tells her that her name is Egwene. And the sul'dam says, a lot of sul'dam give their damane new names, but I'll allow you to keep yours for now. And she gives Egwene a little pat on the head, because this is one of the dynamics in the book, that Egwene starts to realize that part of the conditioning that the damane are put through by their sul'dam, by the woman who wears the bracelet, is they're treated like a pet, like a dog. And, when they do something good, they're given a pat and said, like, good girl kind of thing. It's that very demeaning. It's stripping away your humanity. A damane is a damane. That's who they are now. That's all they are now. Who they were is gone. And even up to including, like, thinking of themselves as a human. You're a servant. You're a damane. A damane means to serve. And this is who you are. This is your world now. This is your life now. And there's that element, particularly in the books, where it is that sort of like a sul'dam is training a dog how to have good behavior in the house. And that's kind of the sort of weird dynamic in the book. And Egwene kind of realizes it. And there's just a touch of that here, with Rena saying, like, good girl, and kind of like touching her on the head in a moment of fondness. And then she walks out. She hangs her bracelet and the chain on the hook on the wall and leaves. And Egwene rushes over, or tries to rush over, to grab the bracelet. And her, fingers, twist back and contort, because the collar prevents her from being able to do it. And I think this is when she finally realizes, at the first time, just how caught and trapped she is, and just how powerful this collar is in punishing disobedience. And again, she doesn't even have to be, the sul'dam doesn't even have to be in the room. She just has to, if Egwene thinks or does, or tries to do something, or even thinks to try to do something, pain is delivered to her. So really great scene to set up the this sort of situation Egwene has found herself in, thanks to Liandrin. And then we get our Wheel of Time logo, and the rest of the show starts. And we pick up right where we left off with Rand. Rand is bound to this wheel outside somewhere, shirtless. Lanfear is sitting on a throne opposite him. And I think this show is letting us know that, what is it? Is it Sermahaj, I think the other Forsaken is? I think the show is combining Sermahaj and Lanfear. It's basically Lanfear, but they're taking some elements of Sermahaj and giving them to Lanfear. Because one of the things about Lanfear in the books is Lanfear wears white. Lanfear is always dressed in white. That's just kind of her thing. And Sermahaj, I think, dresses in black as this kind of, to be the opposite of Lanfear. Because they're both equal in power in terms of among the Forsaken, in terms of being able to wield power, the one power. But Lanfear, status-wise, outranks her. And this is there's this weird dynamic between them in the books, but because Lanfear is dressed in black here, and I don't think she's worn white yet, if I recall, which is completely out of character for Lanfear from the books, I do think they're combining, they're taking some of Semrahaj and giving it to Lanfear's character here. And I actually like her as she's being more and more like Lanfear, now that she's like sort of put off this fake Selene personality, we're beginning to see more of Lanfear's personality emerge. And you know, you can also see with this actress, I think it's Natasha O'Keeffe, why she was cast, because I think she's probably going to do a really good job in this role. She has a presence about her as an actress where she can command a room if she needs to. And you feel the weight behind even a look from her. There's a lot there because, you know, she's a very experienced actress and she's really good at her craft. And you see that here. And that's the kind of casting you need for a lot of these roles, where someone, just by being there, just standing there, can convey power and authority. And she does a really good job of it. And we get to see, you know, Lanfear being much more openly manipulative of Rand in this episode. And again, I like their dynamic together in general. And she's, you know, calls him, like, I think she calls him Luce Theron at least once in this episode. But she's beginning to see what she sees, the Luce Theron, the dragon in him, in Rand, the more time she's spending with him. Particularly here in the sort of dream world. Because at the end of the last episode, Moiraine had told Rand, go to sleep, I'll watch over you, and just kind of talk to Lanfear and figure out what the hell she wants from you. And try to make her think that you still want this relationship, and so you can kind of figure out where she's going with all this. So this whole scene here takes place in, according to the show, if you look at the little X-ray information on the side of the browser, it says it's Telerian Rod. So, and we have, like, Lanfear is trying to talk to him and manipulate him. She tells him he wants, okay, so trying to sort all this out here. Rand wants to know what the hell Ishamael wants. And Lanfear is basically, but she kind of reacts because Rand just straight up calls her Lanfear. He lets her know that I know who you are now. But he's trying to, like, let her know that it's okay. And what are they supposed to be to each other, and what does she want out of him? And Lanfear is obviously manipulating him, and she tells him that she's the one who's been keeping Ishamael out of Rand's dreams, that she's been protecting him from Ishamael, and that's one of the reasons she's been with him, because she can keep Ishamael away. And now, you know, that remains to be seen whether or not that's going to be true here in the show, but this is one of the things she's telling, like, Rand, as, you know, kind of to try to reel Rand back in, you know, because I can help you and I can protect you from Ishamael. And she does say to him that she will help him and protect him, but she has one condition. And then Rand wakes up, and Moiraine is there, and Rand tells Moiraine, is like, you know, she's going to help me, but the condition is I have to leave. You have to go. If she sees you with me, she'll kill you. So her condition was no you. And which, of course, Moiraine doesn't want, because, you know, and Moiraine is invested in Rand, because Rand is the Dragon Reborn, and she's put 20 years of her life into finding this guy. And she wants to try to find some way to prepare him for what's coming as he begins to grow and step into the role of the dragon. And he confronts her about her manipulation. And he's like, you brought me here. You manipulated me to come here. You brought Logain here, knowing that I would come here. And she's like, of course I did, because, you know, I had to get him away from the White Tower so he could train you, because you'd never be able to get near him if he was still in captivity there. So I brought him here, knowing that you'd be able to come here and he'd be able to train you. Now, I spoke about this last week. A person who cannot channel cannot train someone how to channel. And this TV show, again, is completely discarding that lore. And this is something that's frustrated the hell out of me in this entire TV series, is this show has zero interest in the one power that's in the books. They change how the one power is whenever they feel the need to in this TV show. They still, 6 episodes into season 2 at this point, still have not explained Sidon and Sidar. Sidon, the male half of the one power, Sidar, the female half of the one power, 2 separate halves. Only the men can wield Sidon, only the women can wield Sidar. And Sidon was corrupted by the Dark One, and that's why male channelers go crazy, because they have to pierce through this sort of corruption to try to touch Sidon. Still hasn't explained any of that in the show. And even earlier this season, there's a scene where in the White Tower, where Aes Sedai comes into the kitchens, and she's trying to teach them how to manipulate these 2 separate weaves to like filter the water out and make it clean. And she's describing in the show how you pull, I can't remember if it was wood, that she's like, you pull the one power out of the wood. It's like you work with elements. But the show presents it as though the element provides the one source of the one power. So you're pulling like one power out of the wood itself and one power out of the water itself or air or whatever. And that's not how the one power works in the books. The one power is its own thing. The women touch and channel Sidar. And with Sidar, they can manipulate the elements. But the elements themselves don't provide the power to them. And yeah, like Gian says, they haven't explained that very much in the books by this point in The Great Hunt either. They've explained it in episode 8. People think things are explained in the books earlier than they are. Well, yeah, they haven't. And that's a good point. They haven't explained it in the books, but my issue here is what they're showing in the show is just flat out wrong with how the one power actually works. Even if they're not going to sit you down, the audience down, and say, now listen, Tommy, here's how this works. They should at least be showing how it works in a more book accurate way in the TV show. And I don't think, so this show is not doing that though, because I wouldn't have an issue if what they were showing was kind of book accurate, and then they'll, filter in explanations as we get deeper into the story. But they threw out the rules of the one power in the first minute of the first episode of the first season. So they've just kind of done their own thing with the one power. And I think that's probably been one of the biggest gripes from a lot of people who've read these books, myself included, about how it's difficult to tell this story when the centerpiece of it, which is the one power and how it works and the separate halves and how they're different, when that's not even there in the show in an accurate way, it's hard to tell the story in a legitimate way. So that's one of the frustrating things that I've seen in this show is they just casually change the one power as the story needs it in any given episode. And there are elements in the Egwene scenes in the book with this particular Suldam, which we learn is Rena. The scenes in the book between these two, Egwene is actually learning how to channel at a much more accelerated rate than she was learning as a novice in the White Tower, because the Seanchan have a very different relationship with the one power than the White Tower does. The Aes Sedai have a very cautious approach, and completely understandable. They see what happened to the dragon and the 99 male Aes Sedai who channeled with him to seal the Dark One in. And ever since then, they've been a much more cautious sort of Aes Sedai, and they take their time training novices. So, which is why, you could be a novice for a couple of years and then an accepted for multiple more years before you ever get raised to an accepted in the White Tower. Depends upon your how good of a student you are, how quick you learn, how powerful you are, but a lot of attributes. But they take their time, they go slow with it. Whereas here with the Seanchan, once you become a damane, the Suldam's job is to begin training you. And they're training you to be a weapon. They're training the damane to wield the one power to their fullest extent. Because damane are tools to the Seanchan. And the Suldams doesn't see the damane as an Aes Sedai, a woman channeler. The damane is a tool or a weapon to be used as needed. And you want that tool to be as powerful as that tool can be. So it's a very different relationship. So Egwene is, even though under horrific circumstances, because she's being tortured and having her humanity slowly stripped away from her, she is getting a much more accelerated training in how to wield the one power, how to channel the one power, than she would ever get in the White Tower at this point in her early journey as a student. And that's it's an interesting dynamic in the book in particular, in the scenes with Egwene when she's collared with Rhaena, about how different the relationship is to the one power and how much more she finds herself learning. And she's sort of caught in this weird place where she despises every moment of captivity. But there's that part of her that, when you can touch the source, can touch the one power, you want to do that as much as possible. And she gets to do that as a damane to a much greater extent. And her training is much greater than it is in the White Tower. These damane here, even newer damane, are doing things with the one power that the Aes Sedai don't seem to have even thought of being able to do. And it's kind of an enlightening experience for Egwene as a character and where it takes her later in this series in terms of her own relationship with Saidar as she goes deeper into her own story. We don't really get much of that here. We just get the overt, torture that Egwene is going through, because Rhaena's initial job is to break Egwene's will, to get Egwene to understand that this is your world now. Your world this is it. This is who you are. This is who you will always be now. And what you were doesn't exist anymore. And again, you hear throughout these few scenes with Egwene and Rhaena, her Suldam, you hear the screams of the other damane sort of softly in the background, knowing that there's a lot of women being tortured. But initially, this opening scene, it begins to at least give us that. But we still have 2 more episodes to go, so I don't know how much of these last 2 episodes Egwene's going to be in this situation with just Rhaena and not any of the other Seanchan. So I don't know how much time the show's going to have to explore this aspect of her captivity and kind of how eye-opening it is when it comes to her relationship to the one power in terms of the books. I'm curious to see how much of that they're going to be able to convey, because some of what Egwene's going through here, being collared, we get through Egwene's own POV chapters, and some of it we get through Min as a POV, where we get Min sort of sympathetic, trying to figure out how to help her friend and seeing the suffering Egwene's been going through. So we get 2 different elements, 2 different dynamics of what Egwene's going through, internally from Egwene herself and through Min's eyes, Min having to watch this. Because, unlike the show, it was Egwene, Elyane, Nynaeve, and Min who came with Liandrin through the Waygate, and then Egwene and Min are captured by the Seanchan, and Nynaeve and Elyane escape. So in the books, Min is a servant in the household there, and she's allowed to visit Egwene once a week. Because in this portion of the books, Egwene's in captivity here for multiple weeks, and Nynaeve and Elyane are in Falm, just trying to survive and trying not to be noticed by the damane for weeks, weeks at a time before things come to a head. And like I mentioned earlier, this show doesn't seem to be having any interest in what the passage of time is in this season, in this episode, even in particular, since people seem to get from one place to another very quickly. So I don't know. It kind of feels like Egwene's been in captivity for maybe a day at the most, but it's hard to tell because this show isn't really telling us, and it's hard to wrap it in with the books because it's a period of a couple of weeks in the books, this little stretch. Anyway, after Rand has his scene, he wakes up and he tells Moiraine that Lanfear says, you have to go. That's her condition to help. We switch to Min and Mat. And like I mentioned earlier, episode 5 ends with Mat and Min are at this tavern. Min wakes up. She has her own room. She wakes up and Shamael's there and tells her to take Mat to Carian, where Rand is. And then here we see Mat and Min walking through a city at night, and there's some sort of festival going on, and they're in Carian. They're in the Foregate. So, and again, Rand has just woken up from his nap, his little nap time where he talked to to Lanfear. So somehow, when Lan went to sleep, Min was in Tar Valon with Mat, and by the time Rand wakes up, Min and Mat are already in Carian, in the Foregate. So again, this is one of those, that red flag about how we're getting Game of Thrones season 7, season 8, just the logistics of distance traveling just thrown out the window. So, but they're in Carian, and Mat just wants to kind of relax and party because he's been locked up in a cell in the White Tower in this TV show for the past 5 months. So, makes sense. Mat wants to just let off some steam and have a good time, and Min is just concerned because she knows she's kind of bringing this kid here at the request of Ishamael. And outside of the Damodred house, at this point, the only part of Carian we get to see is the Foregate. You know, the rest of the city we haven't seen. The palace, where, you know, the Sun Throne or whatever, we haven't seen any of this stuff. It's just the Foregate and the Damodred house. And I don't know how much, if we're going to get to see the rest of the city or any other parts of the city, or maybe the palace. I don't know. But so far, you know, you're not really getting this sense of size or scale of this place because it's all just happening in the slum, most of it. And we get more this episode again of bouncing back and forth, like very quick moments. Like there are some scenes where it's Nynaeve and Elyane for like 30 seconds, and then we're off to somebody else. So again, that's one of the things that to me, has been throwing off the sort of timing and momentum of the last couple of episodes to a degree, where you have such short scenes like bouncing back and forth between everybody so much, rather than sitting with someone for a while. And like I said, we just see that, okay, Mat and Min are in Carian. That's been established. And now that's all that scene was about, letting us know they're there. And now we're back in Tar Valon, where we all just left. And Liandrin's back in Tar Valon now, again, because we saw her arrive back at the White Tower last episode. And she's visiting her elderly dying son. And she turns around real quick and flings like a fireball, and Lanfear's there and just casually catches it. And Liandrin, after a moment, realizes who it is, you know, and then shows her respect. And Lanfear, pretty much, she wants to know, like, why does Liandrin work for Ishamael? Because Liandrin hates men, so why would you be serving a man? Out of all the Forsaken, why a man? Why Ishamael, with the way you hate men? And she's telling Liandrin, it's like, you know, you swore your oaths so that you would to have the ability to keep your son alive. But, you know, look at him. This is not life. You know, he's suffering, and he's holding you back. And she's telling Liandrin, your obsession with your son is keeping you from greatness and all this stuff. So Lanfear walks over to Liandrin's son and then just sucks the breath out of him and kills him. And she tells Leandrin this, look, you swore your oaths. You can't take your oaths back. But you didn't swear them to Ishamael. You swore them to the Dark One. So you don't really serve Ishamael. You serve the Dark One. And there are many different ways, many different paths to walk in the night. So kind of letting Leandrin know that, I can guide you towards whatever the Dark One has for you. As Leandrin is clearly making moves and manipulating people because this is something Leandrin does. She's a very powerful Forsaken, but Leandrin, all these names. Lanfear likes manipulation. It's kind of what she enjoys and revels in. And, that's one of the things now that she's out as Lanfear. I expect to see her a lot more active in this show, where she's going to be popping up and visiting people and pushing little buttons and getting things started. But again, I like Leandrin in this show. She's a character that's been changed significantly from the books, but in a very positive way. It's one of the good changes. And so far, I'm enjoying Lanfear. I don't understand why she's not wearing white, because that's Lanfear's signature in the books. So it is a bit surprising how this show has deliberately not have her wearing white. So I'm curious as to what's behind that. I'm curious if there's still something else that's going to happen, that Lanfear will then start wearing white from there. I don't know, but it is kind of odd because, Lanfear and white outfits is kind of a thing that she's known for. And then, in case you forgot about them, we go back to Loial and Ingtar. And this is another frustrating part about this season. Ingtar has been completely wasted in this TV show. I don't even know, other than he's there in the book, so they have to kind of have him in the show. They've done nothing with his character. They haven't spent a minute this entire season doing any character work, giving this man an opportunity to play the interesting character that Ingtar is in Book 2. Ingtar is a supporting character, but he's a very important supporting character in The Great Hunt. And the problem with this, however, is what's important about him in The Great Hunt is this sort of relationship he has with Rand. This him and Rand and their kind of interactions with each other is really important in Book 2, especially considering where that goes and what happens as a result of that. And Ingtar he's just completely wasted. He's just there because he's there. And I feel bad for the actor. Imagine getting cast to play Ingtar and you read The Great Hunt and you're like, ooh, this is a fun, juicy role to play. And this is what you're given when you get the script. Where Ingtar and Loial are just servants of High Lady Sarath. They bring in refreshments for her and all these other sort of Seanchan, who are noble people, powerful houses, all hanging out with her. This is sort of Sarath's clique out of the group of Seanchan who've come and sailed across the ocean to come here. And but it's an interesting dynamic. It reminded me a little bit of the movie 300, when, was it Laertes or whatever his name is, the sort of misshapen, deformed Spartan, who, when he comes to Xerxes to betray Leonidas, and he's walking in, and everyone's kind of relaxed on pillows, and they're all just having a good time. And well, this scene isn't to that level of, I don't want to say debauchery or whatever, but they're all just kind of hanging out and enjoying themselves. They're just very rich, powerful people enjoying being rich and powerful, just lounging around. And Sarath, wants the Loial to sing, do this tree singing, because there's this thing that the Ogier can do in the books called tree song, where they can sing to living things and make them grow. And it's something that they've used in the past to help build things. And if this TV show had done the actual Eye of the World story finale from book 1 in season 1, instead of that completely bizarre Eye of the World scene we got, you would have seen Loial do this there, or by the Eye of the World, because there's an entire thing that happens with the Green Man and this whole character that is completely eliminated from season 1. So this is our first opportunity to see tree singing from an Ogier, and he's just kind of singing simple thing. I thought it was okay. I didn't think his tree song, the way they did it, just kind of made it seem like it was anything like unique that couldn't be done by anybody else. But you do see this sort of potted little mini tree start growing and sprouting and growing more in the room. So, and then they're all like clapping in delight and everything. And you can see Loial feels bad because tree singing is a sort of a sacred thing and it's not a parlor trick. But then they're dismissed. And we have Ingtar and Loial walking down the corridors. And Ingtar tells Loial he's found where the horn is. That Turok has this sort of room where he just has all these sort of things he collects. And it's just sitting there in the case. And not really guarded because the way this society is structured among these Seanchan, there's no thought that anyone would dare steal from him. And he's also found out where all these... The women who were basically captured, the damane, are being kept in this one place. And it's, people call it the kennels. And then that's where Egwene would be. And Ingtar just cares about the horn. That's his mission from Faldara. Get the horn, bring it back. And Loial is concerned just as much for Egwene. And Loial's like, but, Egwene is made of hard steel underneath that soft exterior. So if there's anyone who could survive what she's going through, it's her. And then we get back to Egwene again. And we continue more of this, what it's like to be a damane. And the scene with Egwene begins where she picks up this pitcher of water, smashes the Suldam in the face, knocking her out, and then climbs on top of her, and she's just pummeling her bloody. And then you realize it's just Egwene fantasizing, and none of that actually happened. Because then Rhaena actually walks into the room, and Egwene then takes a step towards the pitcher to try to do that, and then is racked in pain again. And the collar starts vibrating, and she falls to the ground, and she's in pain. And Rhaena is trying to explain to her that, she takes the chain that she has on the hook and puts her bracelet back on. And she tells her that a damane cannot touch anything at all if they think to use it as a weapon. And that she will wear the collar for the rest of her life. This is who she is now, and she wants Egwene to just accept it. It's like, there is nothing you can do on your own to harm me. Even the thought of harming me harms you. And she's trying to get Egwene to understand. And Egwene, being who she is, gets up and she tries to punch Rhaena again, which then just blows back into Egwene's face. Egwene feels her own punch, essentially, like twice over. And, Rhaena is again telling her, you are only damane. That is your world. That is your life. You are nothing else. You'll never be anything else. This is who you are now. And she places a cup on the floor and commands Egwene to pour her a cup of water. And as Egwene moves to the pitcher again, she can't grab the pitcher because she cannot let go of picturing using it as a weapon to harm Rhaena. So Egwene can't even touch the pitcher. If Egwene was dying of thirst, Egwene wouldn't even be able to drink the water because she can't touch that pitcher as long as there's even one iota of her brain that believes it's a weapon. So she has to convince herself that it's just a pitcher of water, and it can only ever be a pitcher of water and can never, ever, under any circumstance, be used as a weapon to harm a Suldam. And otherwise, she'll never be able to touch it, never be able to drink. And she's telling her this, and she's trying to see, where's Egwene's breaking point. This is what she's trying to find. And she's pleased at how strong-willed Egwene is, because the stronger a captured damane, the more it takes to break them, the more of it almost gives like a bigger status symbol to the Suldam who has that damane, who trains and breaks and has that damane. So it's like kind of, because the Seanchan society is very hierarchical. There's various like levels to society. It's a very caste system almost, in a sense. And the more powerful the damane, the harder they are to break, the better servants they make, the better that makes the Suldam look. All that kind of stuff plays a role just in the internal workings of the Seanchan as a people. And she's proud of how strong Egwene is, and how the effort that it's going to take to break her. She likes the challenge. And she leaves Egwene for the night. And then Egwene, gets up and she's kind of looking out the barred windows, and she sees this sort of courtyard. And you realize the room she's in is kind of in the basement, and this window is at ground level, street level. And this sort of big courtyard, this sort of center place in the town there. And this is her first look at, like her circumstances and seeing outside. And like there's a tree there and everything. And then we're back to Carian again, and Mat and Min. And in particular, this is Min in her room, whatever room she has here in the foregate in the slums. And she wakes up and the Ishamael's there again. And she's like, I brought Mat here to, fulfill your promise, take my visions away so I don't have this power anymore. And he tells her that Rand, the dragon, is here in Carian, and that she has to make sure Mat leaves with Rand when Rand leaves. And if she does that, then he'll fulfill his promise and take away her curse. And then she realizes that, wait, how did you see what I saw? How do you know what I saw when I looked at Mat? And he says, do this last thing and I promise I'll take away your curse. And Min is like, and if I don't? And then he just smiles and sort of vanishes away. And then she wakes up for real this time, because she basically woke up in Telarian Rod there, because apparently everyone goes to Telarian Rod in this show to talk to Forsaken and stuff. And then we get to the first of our Welcome to the Days of Our Lives soap opera, just nonsense in this show. We have Alanna and her two warders and Lan. They're all on horseback. It's in the middle of the night somewhere. They're traveling, and Alanna's like, oh, this looks like a good place to stop for the night, to rest. And it turns out it's at a temple for the Forsaken. That's who knows how long ago it was built. And Lan is like, kind of an odd place to stop. And he realizes there's a weird vibe going on with Alanna and her warders. And he's trying to figure out what's up. He realizes they're up to something, and he doesn't know what it is. And so he tells Alanna that he needs to find the Amyrlin seat, because Moiraine wants him to go back to the White Tower to become a warder for somebody else. But since Moiraine was banished by the Amyrlin, that banishment includes him, so only the Amyrlin can undo his banishment, so he has to find her. And then they're like looking at him and with even more suspicion. And then it's later in the night, and you hear Alanna in the tent with her warders doing what they do at night. And Lan gets up to leave, and all of a sudden her warders are there. They weren't in the tent at all, or they did that like teleporting thing that Lan did in Faldara in episode 7 of season 1, where he was inside that room, and then all of a sudden he's next to Nynaeve. But then they want to know, they're confronting Lan because they had seen the parchment that Moiraine had, that Lan took from Moiraine, that was the poem about Lanfear. So they think, are you a dark friend? Are you and Moiraine with Lanfear? Are you dark friends? Like, why do you want the Amyrlin? And then Lan is like grabbed by the one power, by Alanna. And they're basically, look, you don't come clean, you're not leaving this place alive. And then Lan basically, I'm going to betray Moiraine's trust and imperil the whole world, and tells Alanna and her two warders that Moiraine and he, they found the Dragon Reborn. And that's why he needs to let the Amyrlin know the dragon is here. And they're just kind of shocked. So again, just of all the ways to try to handle this, and this is what happens when the show insists on having characters be more main characters than they are at this point in the books. So what we get for Lan and Alanna and her waters and Moiraine and her sister, all of this is entirely made up here for this TV show just to give these characters something to do. And something quite just frankly dumb. Because this is the dumbest way to go about this stuff. And I am not a fan when this show ventures off into their own territory. Because when they kind of do what's happening in the books, they're actually doing a decent job of that this season. You know, the stuff that's book recognizable, like the things with Egwene and Nynaeve and Elyane to an extent, they're doing a really good job. It's compelling television. It's compelling story. But when they go and do this stuff, they're just making up whole cloth on their own. They're not, quite frankly, they're not good at it. And it shows. And you see this like kind of glaring disparity in story quality between adapting the actual book stuff and them just inserting their own stuff. There's a big disparity in story quality here. And it's one of the more frustrating things about this TV show is we keep getting we get some of both. You know, if you just, there's enough in these books to keep 8 hours a season occupied without this insistence on making up their own stuff for some of these characters. And sometimes it's interesting, and sometimes it's this soup, like I said, Days of Our Lives nonsense. But now the secret's out. Now, who doesn't know Rand is the Dragon Reborn at this point in this TV show? Apparently everybody. So I'm trying to think of, seriously, who doesn't know that Rand's the dragon? So, but we're back with Rand again, because, you know, now all these other people know. And Rand's dreaming, and he sees all of his friends dead around him, and suddenly Shamael's there telling him that this is what you're going to do. You know, the power is going to drive you mad, like it did Lews Therin, and you're going to kill everyone you love. But then a Shamael, excuse me, Lanfear shows up and then seemingly banishes the Shamael. And I got the impression that this is all created by Lanfear here. Like, Shamael wasn't really there. She, like, projected in a Shamael to then show Rand how she can banish him when she wants. That's kind of thing. It's just more of Lanfear manipulating Rand. And she's telling Rand about the dream world and how here, you know, you have to be careful, because if you die here, you'll die in real life. But you can also use this place to your advantage. You can travel to other places in the dream world and see places and see anyone you want to see. If you know where they are, you can find them. And while they're sleeping, you know, you can talk to them as if you're both awake in the same room. So there are a lot of advantages to learning how to manipulate this sort of Telerian Rod dream world. And she apologizes to him, like, yes, I shouldn't have lied to you. It was the wrong way to go about trying to help you. But she says, I am willing to help you. I want to protect you and guide you, and so you're ready to do, because she's interested in making sure Rand does whatever Rand's going to do from her own reasons and her own perspectives. Because again, in Lanfear's eyes, this is Lews Therin, who she was in love with before, and Lews Therin has been reincarnated. So yes, he's Rand, and yes, it's this body, but as far as she's concerned, that's Lews Therin, and Lews Therin is hers, and no one's going to convince her that Lews Therin isn't hers. So she's going to play this fine line, this fine game, dancing on like the edge of a knife, if you will. Pleasing, not pissing off the Dark One too much, not pissing off Shamael too much, but very much pushing pieces on the board to where she wants them to go herself, just as the Shamael is doing for his own reasons to his own ends. And But again, I like the scenes here between Rand and Lanfear. They're actually, now that she's Lanfear and not pretending to be Selene, the scenes are more interesting. So yeah, the scenes between them are much more interesting than when she was playing Selene. Selene was much more interesting in the book than the Selene she was playing here in this TV show. But now that she's Lanfear, there is a different dynamic the actress is bringing to the character. And you see even her body language and her mannerisms are different. And that's good. And it's all done in a way where you can see Lanfear much more than you don't really see Selene anymore. And I like that. And the actress is doing a really good job. And Lanfear is a very fun role. And I'm looking forward to seeing where she's going to take this and what else she's going to do with it. But she's like telling him, it's like, okay, look, I can take you to anyone you want to see. And she takes him to Falm. And they're suddenly standing in Egwene's room, her chamber. And again, Egwene's dreaming here. So they're in the dream world in Egwene's room. And Rand sees Egwene. And like he's puzzled as to why she's here, because he thought she was in the White Tower. And he calls out to her, and she wakes up in the dream world and turns to him, and she's puzzled, like seeing Rand. It's like, what are you doing here? And he comes over to her, and he crouches down. He's about to touch her face, and Lanfear pulls him back, away from that place, back to the Foregate, the dream world version of the Foregate, if you will. And because jealous Lanfear, no one else is allowed to have Rand in any way except for her, in her eyes. But it's an interesting scene, and it's her manipulating Rand again, because this is how she lets Rand know Egwene is in trouble, because they all want Rand to get to Falm. Ishamael for his own reasons, Lanfear for her own reasons, and by her taking him and showing him what Egwene is suffering, Rand's going to go, because this is just who Rand is, and she knows this. And Rand begs her to tell him where that was. Like, where is Egwene? Where was that? And she tells him Ishamael has her. And he says he'll do anything, please. I'll do anything to save Egwene. Anything you want. And that's kind of how their scene ends. Which, is Lanfear doing what Lanfear does, manipulating Rand in particular to get what she wants, and using his loyalty and honor for his friends to play him into her own hands, for her own ends. And there's this sort of game the Forsaken play with each other, where they're trying to one-up each other and kind of foil each other's plans to some degree, because it's just who they are. So again, I like this stuff. I would much prefer that Rand was, already there doing his own thing like he is in the books, because we've wasted this whole season, really, 7 episodes to get Rand to this moment. And because in the books, he has no idea Egwene is there. When he finally shows up in Falm to do what he's come there to do, he kind of sees Egwene for a moment and is like kind of startled. Because what in the world is Egwene doing here? How is she here, and why is she here? But it's just a moment where they see each other, and because he's so focused on getting that horn in the book. So, it just kind of happens by happenstance. They just both end up in the same place in the book. So I guess I can see in the TV show that they're using it as a manipulation tool to get Rand to Falm. And but again, this is something they had to create to give themselves a reason for why Rand would go to Falm, because they took the reason in the books why Rand goes to Falm away from him. So now they're stuck here. Oh, we got to figure out a reason why he would go there now, since the reason he actually goes there in the book, we didn't give him. And this is how they've come up with justifying that Rand is going to go to Falm in the show, because so they kind of create these problems for themselves, and then sometimes they give solutions that are very clunky, and sometimes they give solutions like this that I don't really object to, because at least seeing Lanfear manipulating Rand and using it this way, that's a good way to get Rand to have a reason to go to Falm. So it works the way they're doing it in the show. I just wish we didn't have to waste nearly 7 episodes to get to this point. But then we are back with Egwene again, and now she wakes up for real in her cell, realizing, looking around for Rand, trying to, like, wondering what that was even was about, because in the show, Egwene hasn't realized or learned about Telerian Rod yet. She doesn't know it's a thing. So we see her kind of ending up there in her dreams, without realizing what's happening and why. But this is something that's going to play a pretty big role in going forward in this story, particularly with Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elyane. So it's interesting how they've been just sort of organically, quietly introducing Telerian Rod as a concept in season 2, because even the Dark Knight Social cold open of the whole season at the very beginning of season 2, that, according to the show, was taking place in Telerian Rod as well. So again, at least they're establishing Telerian Rod, though they seem to be changing the rules, because it seems like just about anybody can, and yes, anyone can kind of pop into Telerian Rod briefly, and when they're dreaming, anybody can for the most part, I think. But there's a lot more people who are able to be actively, physically present in Telerian Rod, or not physically really, but as spiritually present as you can be, if you will, in the show, a lot more. People who aren't like Aes Sedai or Forsaken and stuff in particular, there's a lot more of them who seem to be able to be there in the show than in the books, from what I remember. But again, not really a major gripe or anything. But Egwene is just in her room now. She's awake. She's frustrated. And she hears someone in the room next to her. There's sort of a pipe in the wall between her sort of room and the room next to her. And she could hear what's another damane in there. And that damane is just kind of sitting there, just repeating, a damane cannot touch anything she believes to be a weapon. The lessons that are being drilled into each of the damane, this other woman in the other room is just kind of repeating those without thought, out loud to herself. And you realize that that person's kind of been broken already. And Egwene's trying to get her to talk to her, but she just can't get through. The woman's just repeating these sort of mantra about the damane, of just all the different Soldam instructions. And it's a pretty, it's kind of a tough moment for Egwene, because there's a part of her brain realizing or wondering or fearing, like, is that my future? Is that my fate? Is that going to be me in another week or month or day or hour? So, again, I like these scenes here in this episode, this whole dynamic with the damane and the Soldam and what they're going through, the sort of mental and physical sort of torture and deconditioning and then reconditioning that they're sort of undergoing. I think it's generally very well done. It's some of the better parts of this season. And then we are back to Nynaeve and Elyane. And now we have them, and they're staying with this woman who, Ryma, who is an Aes Sedai. She's of the Yellow Ajah. She was a part of a group of Aes Sedai who was sent by the Amyrlin to Falm to investigate this, like, mystery of these foreigners showing up and, like, starting some sort of slow or small invasion or something. And she's telling them that it was basically 4 Aes Sedai in their waters, and we came off the boat, came pretty much into town, and were attacked. And 2 of the Aes Sedai in their waters were killed, and they captured the other Aes Sedai, and she and her water were able to get away. And she has the rings of, I think, the two Aes Sedai who were killed, and I think she has the ring of the Aes Sedai who was captured, who turns out to be the Blue Sitter, who we saw in season 1. In the scenes that were in the White Tower, there's a scene where Moiraine had gone and shared a bath with the sort of the woman who's like the head of the Blue Ajah. That woman, and that's the woman who told Moiraine that the Amyrlin's sending me off to Falma to investigate this stuff. And she's the one who's been captured. And Ryma here, the Yellow Ajah Aes Sedai, she's trying to figure out how to rescue her, because she has what's known as the Adam. It's the collar and bracelet. She has a set of those that the other Aes Sedai died, gave their lives for them to get. And she's been trying to figure out how it works, because she realizes you can't rescue the people trapped, the damane, if you can't get the collar off them. So you're not going to be able to help them. You're not going to be able to save them. So she's been frustrated because she's trying to figure out how this thing even works. Because if they can't figure out how to unlock it, open the collar up, then there's no point in even trying to rescue any of these people. And so her and they're just trying to figure that out, of how they're going to figure out how this whole process works, because they're kind of stuck in one place at this point. This Aes Sedai's been here for who knows how long, because she hasn't been able to unravel the mystery of this collar. It's known as an Adam, the collar and bracelet. And until she figures it out, she's kind of stuck, just trying to hide, keeping away from the damane. So she really can't channel, because if she channels to any kind of significant degree, the damane will sense it. The one particular damane in particular, the one with the little pacifier, she seems to be the damane that the Seanchan have, who has a proclivity to feel women channeling much more than some of the others do. So she's being very, very careful. And she tells them she's arranged a ship. She's got a ship ready to go. So she's going to pretty much send them off to back to the White Tower, because they were told. She told them. She realized, well, no, backwards. She is told by Nynaeve and Elyane that they were set up by Liandrin, because Ryma wants to know, what are you doing here? Why did you run away from the White Tower? And they're like, no, Liandrin said I brought us here. She's a dark friend. She broke her oath. She can use the power to attack people. And this is when Ryma realizes it's the Black Ajah is real. And this is a really well-acted moment on the part of the actress, because you see the reality of the Black Ajah kind of sink in. And there's almost this moment of despair on her face and in her body language. And she realizes just how imperiled all of her sisters really are, with the Black Ajah actually not being a legend or spooky tale, but being a real threat, a real thing and a threat. So she wants them to go back to the White Tower and let the Amyrlin know of the danger everyone's in. And Nynaeve is staying. Nynaeve's like, I'm staying until Egwene is freed, so Elyane can go back, because she's the daughter heir. She needs to get to safety anyway. And Elyane is like, no, I'm not leaving either. And I really like the addition of Ryma Sedai here in this TV show, in this episode. Now, in the book, Ryma was captured as soon as they got to Falm. So she's been a damane for pretty much most of this book. We don't see her until Egwene meets her, once Egwene is collared. But Ryma's a damane already in the book. But here in the show, they changed that, and they had her still be free, because I think it's a very powerful scene in this episode, which is coming in a little bit, to show just how powerful the damane and the Suldam are, how powerful, how forceful the Seanchan are when in wielding the one power, how different they approach it than the Aes Sedai do, to the Aes Sedai's detriment, unfortunately. It makes the Aes Sedai much more at risk than they really should be from another channeler because of the Aes Sedai's rules and the three oaths, and it does hamper the Aes Sedai's abilities to some degree. And as far as the Seanchan go, the damane, they're taught to wield the power you have and do with it whatever you can, kind of thing. But only at the Sul'dam's command, of course. So again, I like the dynamic here. Now, I do miss the dynamic in the book because Egwene has been captured and Nynaeve and Elyane are following, and they come to Falme. And when we see them again, they've been in Falme for weeks, and they're just getting by. They've pretty much squandered their money, and they're like trying to like scrounge up or steal food. And it's an interesting situation that the two of them are in. And because for Elyane, this is all new. She's the daughter at the end, or she's never had a moment of discomfort in her entire life. So this is a brand new experience for her, and she's adapting and she's trying. But in the book, Nynaeve is the one who's kind of stepped up and taken charge because she's a wisdom, she has experience, she's used to making the decisions when the decisions, hard decisions, need to be made. And so I like this part of the book. It's short, but the conversations that Elyane and Nynaeve have in these couple of chapters here are very interesting in the books, getting to see their different personalities, and Elyane coming to grips with the world is a much scarier and much more dangerous place than that comfy, privileged little life she's led in Andor, growing up in Camelin, in this palace. And that the world is very, very dangerous. And being the daughter heir is going to save her. It's her own wits and skill that's going to keep her alive and keep her free. And Nynaeve is, Nynaeve is the one in charge. And it's an interesting dynamic in the book between the two of them because Elyane and Nynaeve, they do have a lot more similarities than either one would admit. Neither one likes anyone telling them what to do. Neither one believes anyone should be able to tell them what to do for very different reasons. And they do kind of clash throughout this book series because of they both kind of, for, again, very different reasons, very different experiences, they both believe that they should be the one in charge. And we begin to see this sort of dynamic between these two characters as they're really getting to like know each other in a deeply connected way because, they were, sort of fellow students, if you will, at the White Tower. But now their lives are in each other's hands, and it's a very, very different relationship they have now as two women. And while I understand having Ryma be still an Aes Sedai and not yet a damane in this TV show makes complete sense for what they're doing in the show, I do miss a little bit of that dynamic from these couple of chapters here in the book. Because it's only this very, last part of book 2 where all this stuff happens in Falme with Egwene as a damane and everything, and Nynaeve and Elyane trying to figure out how to rescue her. But they do a little bit of that in this episode, trying to show this sort of dynamic between Elyane and Nynaeve. But I do miss that because the Aes Sedai is here in the show, that neither one of these two has any real agency. They're just kind of there and just doing what the Aes Sedai says, which is a very different dynamic because in the book, they're surviving on their own skills and wits. So it's a very different thing for them. It's a very different experience that they go through that really teaches them a lot about themselves and helps them a lot as they move deeper into the story. So this is a bit of a different dynamic, but completely understand why they have Ryma as still a free Aes Sedai and not yet a captured, collared damane. Because it works for what they're doing, and I'm assuming for what's to come in the next 2 episodes. So setting up this sort of power level, showing an Aes Sedai, fully trained, very experienced, still being taken down by a couple of damane and suldam and some soldiers. But we just have this kind of scene. Now, I'm hoping that Bail Doman is going to be on his boat sitting in that harbor at Falm, because that's where he is in the books. Because in the book, Nynaeve and Egwene realize, okay, they hear that there's a ship that's been waiting, and they go down and they talk to him, and it's Bail Doman, who keeps running into these Emmon Fields kids because the pattern has decided, has kind of plucked Bail Doman out and said, yes, you're going to serve the whims of not only these 3 Ta'veren boys, but some very powerful Aes Sedai, very powerful women who are kind of caught in their Ta'veren pattern themselves in their own ways through like knowing them their whole lives. And Bail Doman, like I mentioned before in one of my earlier reviews of this season, Bail Doman is someone who the pattern just pushes where the pattern needs him to be to help out one of these Ta'veren, or in this situation, to people like Nynaeve and Elyane and Egwene. There's very important people that this sort of age is sort of swirling around, and you have characters like Bail Doman who he's just bounced from place to place by the pattern, so he's where he needs to be. And Bail Doman is fierce about keeping his word. So in the book, he promises, okay, I won't sail until the 3 of you are here. And when everything hits the fan in the finale of book 2, and his crew are looking at him, it's like, we have to get the hell out of here. This place is like going to hell. And Bail Doman's like, no, I gave my word, and we're not going anywhere until my word is met, kind of thing. That's one of the things I love about Bail Doman's character in the books. We just saw him briefly earlier in the season when he brings that sort of parchment to Moiraine. He's another character who should have been there in season 1, should be here more in season 2. But we at least got him for a minute. Hopefully he'll show up in one of these last 2 episodes. Hopefully he is sitting there in the harbor and it is his ship. Or maybe Moiraine is going to sort of manipulate Rand, or the Amyrlin will manipulate Rand into hopping on Bail Doman's ship there, and maybe Bail Doman's around this area and he'll sail them up the rivers or something. Who knows? But I do hope Bail Doman shows up, because he's a character that keeps popping up throughout. And I really, really enjoy his character in the books. So I hope he gets the screen time he deserves. But anyway, we get to one of the most interesting moments in this episode, where we're back in the Damodred house, and Moiraine is sitting writing a letter. And she's distraught. She's got tears in her eyes and stuff. And we see her writing out. It says, something has happened to me. Something I should have told you a long time ago. I've been stilled. And then she stops and crumples it up. And I was reading that, and I was like, oh, wait. Okay, is the show trying to tell us that Moiraine has actually been stilled and not shielded? Or is this show telling us that Moiraine thinks she's been stilled? Because if she was stilled, then she's no longer bound by the 3 oaths. And she can just straight up lie if she wants. And there have been moments this season where you can see she still can't lie, and she's trying to carefully word things. So, which to me has indicated that she's just been shielded. Because there is no way Moiraine would not know the difference between being shielded and being stilled. If she was stilled, she'd know it absolutely without any uncertainty that she was stilled. She would know this. The bond with it would be gone. All of that gone. So I'm still convinced that she's shielded. And it's kind of, because, again, I don't want to spoil anything, but there are things that involve stilling some Aes Sedai that come later that just are a pretty significant thing, a massive tectonic shift in this story, and then causing something else to happen, which is just turns the world on its head, or at least the Aes Sedai world on its head in some ways. And I cannot for the life of me imagine that they actually stilled Moiraine. With all of that stuff, where because stilling is so critical to these things that happen later, to other people, like I can't imagine that they're just going to still Moiraine too. Well, let's just still her. And which then has me worried for, are they not going to do what's coming and what happens in the books? There's no way they can't do that. So I just don't know what the show is doing again with Moiraine, because there's nothing to indicate, based on the way she's been acting, that she's been anything other than shielded. And she absolutely 100% would know if she was stilled. But then again, this is this TV show's version of the One Power, and this TV show has already taught us that they will disregard the rules of the One Power anytime they want to disregard them. So I have no idea what being stilled even means in this TV show, if she is stilled. Yes, Logain was gentle, the male version of stilling, but he seems to... Everyone seems to think he can still train Rand on how to wield the One Power, which should be an impossibility. So, I don't know. I'm still going with, no matter what Moiraine says or what Moiraine thinks, that Moiraine has been shielded. Because I just cannot wrap my head around them actually stilling her based on what's going to happen later, just in general in this story when it comes to stilling people, because it's a significant thing. And I just can't believe they would just so casually do it here separately. So, but we'll see. But according to her, she thinks she's stilled. Which, okay, she's certainly not acting like it. Because when you're stilled, it's a struggle to even have the will to just live. It's a struggle to stay alive, to not just want to end everything. And we see Moiraine just, yeah, she's upset, but she's still manipulating and doing everything Moiraine does. So we'll see. I'm just going with she's shielded until the show unequivocally says that she's been stilled. But we'll see. But she seems to think she is. And she can't lie. So even if she hasn't been stilled, she at least thinks she is in this TV show, which means they're changing yet another aspect to how the One Power works. Because she damn well knows she was stilled, if this was the power in the books. Anyway, she crumples a letter. Barthanes walks in. Now, Barthanes is Barthanes Damodred. We met him earlier. He's a very completely different character in this TV show than he is in the books. A very, very different person. Here in this TV show so far, he just seems like a genuinely sweet, nice guy, which is a very different dynamic than Lord Barthanes Damodred in Book 2 that Rand is kind of dealing with in the sort of Daes Dammar, the Game of Houses stuff, which I think is going to be the name of the next episode, Daes Dammar. So, I don't know. But, yes, but Barthanes here, he's just this swell fella. He's a nice guy. And he's bringing a sandwich to Moiraine because this is his aunt. And his aunt's his favorite aunt, and he loves that she's here, even though she's been very gruff and dismissive, which she is immediately to him in this scene again. And he's kind of like upset and like leaves the room, and he runs into his mother out in the hallway, and he tells her, "Yeah, you were right, but I wanted to at least try one more time." And then he walks off, and then Vare just storms into the room and tells her sister, tells Moiraine, like, "I've had enough of you. Like, why did you not come back when our father was dying? Why did you abandon him? He loved you, and you never came back to say goodbye to him." And she wants to know, like, what's so important that you couldn't even come back to say goodbye to our father as he was dying? He was a good man, and you hurt him in his last hours, kind of thing. And there's a lot of this resentment. And again, this is friggin' daytime soap opera Days of Our Lives stuff that is not in the books at all. This is completely made up for this TV show, and it's just very frustratingly done because this is just there just to kill time until we're getting to the stuff that matters in this season. And it's just annoying part of this show that we tend to sometimes have so much screen time wasted on things the show's just making up because they want to make them up and not giving us important book things. So I'd rather stuff from the book, because the things from the book in this episode, they've done very well. And then we get, like I said, this stuff. And Vare is like, I want you gone by tomorrow. Get out. I'm not going to have you here insulting my son and belittling our father's memory. And Moiraine is like, I'm the elder sister, so I'm the heir of House Damodred. This is my house, and you're here. You and your son are here at my graces. And Vare is like, just kind of like looking at her, almost shocked. And he's like, you don't have an ounce of our father in you. You're all of our mother is in you, because apparently the mother was not a good person, supposedly. So it's just, again, I get it. You know, they have this dynamic, and Vare was mentioned in passing in the books. We never saw her, and we're spending an entire season with the Damodred family hour. You know, I'm waiting for to go on, what's his name? Not Maury, the other guy. So I might as well put him on that TV show and let him hash out their differences with a whole crowd going, ooh, ah, and everything at them. Because this is the frustrating part of this TV show, is how much of our time gets wasted on this nonsense. And how much of the books they don't give us to do this stuff instead, for whatever reason. Because the book stuff in this episode is really, really good. And we're seeing more this season of what this show could be. And then we have this stuff, like just sandwiched in between, just reminding us of how bad the show could be as well. And I do think last episode was a better overall episode than this episode. But the good parts of this episode were better even than last episode. So it's just the bad parts of this episode were really bad. And Moiraine sits down and starts writing the letter to Swan Sanche again. And then we switch to Swan Sanche, finally. You know, where's she been all season? Nobody knows. Anver mentioned, or Leandrin mentioned, in a scene earlier that supposedly the Amyrlin went to Caemlyn. She was visiting in, I guess, Queen Morgase or whatever in Caemlyn. I don't know. But we see Swan Sanche. She's in this sort of horse and carriage thing, traveling. She's got letters of her own she's been working on. And then all of a sudden the carriage comes to a stop, and she hears voices outside. And she hears, like, what presumably her warders or somebody or other warders going, stop, stop. You know, who are you? What are you doing? And she touches the source, and she starts channeling all these sort of knives made out of the one power around her. And she's just sitting there, like, waiting to see. And then the carriage door is pulled open, and there's Lan. And she's like, what's wrong? What's happened? And Lan's like, it's Moiraine. And the scene cuts. So, again, these quick little scenes, but at least we finally got the Amyrlin. And next episode, we're going to get the scene with Rand al'Thor finally meeting the Amyrlin seat, which happens very early in book 2. But this TV show has moved it to very late in season 2 instead. They've taken the scene and they're having it happen here late towards the end of the story for this season rather than the beginning where it is in the books. So we'll see how that goes next episode. But again, we're back to Rand, and now Rand has gone to see Logain again, and because Rand is just frustrated, And Logain wants nothing to do with him, but Rand tells him, look, I know you still want to make a difference, and I can give you that chance, but you have to help me. Help me, channel the source. Help me channel the one power. And apparently, all it takes to train somebody in this show is to, hey, use the one power. And then Rand just starts channeling more and more and more and more, and he gets brighter and brighter and brighter until eventually it's so powerful, he finally barely lets go of it and starts puking. And, he's frustrated because I'm not going to be able to learn how to use this quick enough for what I need to do. And Logain is telling him, it's like, look, with all that power, you don't even have to know what to do. You have so much power, you can face anybody. And as long as you don't burn yourself out, no one's going to stand a chance against you. That's kind of Logain's point of view. But again, why did this guy need to come and find Logain and spend a whole season trying to have a couple of conversations with Logain if all it takes for Rand to learn how to channel is go, hey, embrace the source, buddy. And he embraces the source. Like, fucking, I could have taught him how to do that. Anybody could have taught him how to do that. Some bum on the street could have taught him how to do that. So I just, again, these are the parts of this TV show. It's like you could wonder, like, you want to sit the showrunner down. It's like, what in the world is in your brain that this is what you think you should be doing with this stuff? And it makes me worry that we're not going to get Asmodean. Because, again, Asmodean is a very important character when it comes to Rand in this TV show, who, if season 3 is going to be book 4, means we should be getting Asmodean. But with them doing this stuff with Logain, are we not going to get Asmodean? Is just none of that going to happen? Is Logain just going to take over Asmodean's role somehow? Because apparently you don't need to channel to teach them how to channel in this TV show, even though that's an absolute requirement in the books. But anyway, we'll see. We'll see. But we have this little scene here. Just a reminder, I suppose, that, hey, Rand is a very powerful channeler. He's the Dragon Reborn. He should be able to wield more power than anybody. Just kind of reminding you again that he can do this, because we haven't really had him do it all that much this TV show. All he's done with the one power in this show so far in this season is like burn the house he was sleeping in down. And that's about it for the most part. And he killed a Fade. But other than that, he really hasn't been doing much. And he hasn't been doing anything he's doing in the book, because he's not doing anything he was doing in the book. But hopefully book things are going to finally come in the last 2 episodes, because we're going to have him meeting the Amerlin, and then hopefully going off to Falm, and the whole book 2 finale hopefully will happen. We'll see. But after this, Rand is just kind of annoyed. He's walking through the Foregate. It's daytime. He's going somewhere. I don't know where the hell he's going. And he hears Mat, because there's Mat dicing with people, because Mat and Min had come to the Foregate to Carian. And Mat and Rand have their reunion. And I love this scene. It's just like Donald Finn finally gets to do something in this TV show this season, where, they see each other, and there's this sort of moment where they're like looking at each other, almost both stunned and not really sure how to react and how to even feel. And then smiles break out, and Mat runs and hugs him. And it's just a great moment between these two kids who have grown up together. And we really get to see Donald Finn like bring his Mat personality to life and give him an emotional scene to do, because this is the first time he's getting to act opposite Rand. And this is a really critical dynamic we need between these two actors for the rest of this TV show. Very, very critical, Mat and Rand in particular. So these actors, seeing them together for the first time is a big moment in this show, because it's a great taste for the kind of dynamic we should be able to get from these two actors playing these two characters. and then playing these two characters interacting with each other. Because Rand and Mat always have this really interesting relationship in the books, this friendship with each other. You know, Rand is just trying to keep everything together. He's so focused and driven, and he uses people the deeper he gets into the story, and he becomes hard when he needs to be hard, but he still deeply cares about his Emond's Field friends, and Mat and Perrin and Egwene, you know, and Nynaeve. These are people he feels more for in a friendship and just loving way than anyone else he's ever going to know, pretty much. And there's always this sort of special bond. And Mat being Mat, Mat is Mat, and Mat's a rascal, and Mat likes to get himself in a little bit of trouble and get himself out of trouble, and Mat's always kind of cracking jokes, and Mat's like, he'll complain about not wanting to do things, but he's got that severe loyalty streak in him as well. And Mat does what Mat does, and they're very different personalities from each other, but they complement each other very, very well. Because part of Mat's dynamic, and hopefully this is stuff we'll get to see, is kind of keeping an eye on Rand with that, you going crazy yet, buddy? Or are you okay? Or you just mad? Not mad with a capital M, but mad with a small m kind of thing. So, you know, this is a nice first little look at these two with this new actor, Donald Finn, in the role of Mat. So it was a great little moment. Like, we should have had these two together this whole season, or most of the season anyway, because there is a point in the book where Rand does get separated from them briefly. But we should have had Mat and Rand like this most of the season. And we're finally just getting a moment of these two characters together here at last in episode 7 or episode 6. So, and it gives you a glimpse of what we could have had all season long with these two actors getting to play off each other, with this particularly Donald Finn now playing Mat. It's a shame that their plots have been changed so much from the books, these two, Rand and Mat, that they should have had so much more time together, just as actors on screen at this point in the season. So, but at least finally, because, you know, if season 3 is indeed going to be book 4, The Shadow Rising, Mat and Rand, they go through a lot together when they go to the Threefold Land. There's a lot that happens, and their relationship with each other as friends, and which also begins to develop into a sort of a martial relationship with the like combat war aspect of it. Really like critical things forged between these two men in The Shadow Rising, because each is now stepping into who they're becoming much, much more than they were before that 4th book arrives, when they really both begin to find ways to start being comfortable in the men they're becoming. And man, I wish we would have had more of these two throughout season 2 together, because this short little scene with Rand and Mat is such a delight and such a treat to see these two actors get to play off each other for the first time. And I hope more and more of this as this show goes on longer, because Mat, Rand together, their dynamic is some of my favorite stuff in the books. Their own plots and how they cross and crisscross each other and run parallel to each other, and what each kind of does that affects the other, some ways good, some ways bad, some ways like favorable, some ways frustrating, without them sometimes even knowing how they're impacting each other, all throughout the series. It's just some fantastic stuff. And it's nice, finally, episode 6, we get these two characters together again in this story, and these two actors together for the first time. So I wish there was so much more of this already at this point in this season. But finally, it's a start with these two, as short-lived as it seems to be, at least for the rest of this episode. Anyway, I can't believe it's an hour and 40 minutes in, and I'm getting to like the kind of tail end of what happened in this episode. There's so much to talk about, and part of that is trying to like talk about what's happening in these episodes and what's happening in the book at the same time, and sometimes how they line up, how they're so starkly different from each other. But this is an interesting show because we can see some things that they're starting to get good at, and we can see things that they suck really bad at. And luckily, there's a lot of things they're really good at in the rest of this episode, for the most part. So we're back to Nynaeve and Elyane with Ryma, the Yellow Ajah, Aes Sedai. And Elyane and Ryma are kind of touching the Adam, the collar and bracelet, very softly with the one power, because they have to be very, very careful. Because if they channel too strongly the damane, particularly that one damane in particular with the bib or the pacifier in their mouth for some bizarre reason, will sense them and catch them. So they're being very, very careful, but the two of them together can't quite get it, and they need help. But Elyane picks up the collar, and she's looking at it. There's no seals, there's no breaks, there's no seams, and she realizes it's a terangrial. And Nynaeve realized, similar to the arches in the White Tower that she went through for her accepted test, those were terangrial as well. And which I like, because if you've read the books, this is foreshadowing things that are coming later, and it's a nice little moment to just put in there, and particularly for it to be Elyane that recognizes that it's a terangrial, because this is like character building they're doing and foreshadowing for her character that they've been doing in this season. The little bits we've mentioned of her, they've shown some parts of Elaine's personality and sort of abilities that are hinting at things to come that come later in these books. And this is another one of those little moments where she's the one who senses it's actually a terangrial. And this is when Ryma tells them more about how they were dispatched and the other Aes Sedai were killed or caught and all this stuff. And she's learned that the Seanchan want to channel every woman on this continent who they want to collar every woman on this continent who can channel all of them. They basically want to subjugate the whole world for their empress, who I cannot wait. I hope this TV show gets renewed long enough to get to where we get the empress, because she's such an interesting character in the books. I cannot wait for that character in the books, and where that takes a certain other character in the books. And I just hope the show is able to get better and do less of the bad stuff and more of the good stuff, so that they can get that far into the story. Because, man, I really, really can't wait till we get to see the Empress when she comes. She's such a cool character in the book, especially the way she's introduced. And anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent there. I don't want to give spoilers away to people watching this who haven't read these books. But there's so many cool things that they're just barely beginning to just drop little hints in for here in this show. So at least that's a good sign that there's a lot of things that this TV show should be giving us that's in these books, because they are definitely dropping little hints to things. But anyway, we realize we're building towards the finale of this episode, because we switch to Egwene just very briefly. Again, she's just kind of in that chamber again, and she's in pain. She keeps trying to remove the collar, and then Rena shows up, puts her wrist bracelet back on, And she's telling Egwene, it's like, because Egwene is like, this is horrible. How could anyone create these collars? And Rena tells her it was an Aes Sedai is the one who created this in the first place. Because the Seanchan, and I don't think in the book, you learn a bit more that the Seanchan's empire was founded by the son of Arthur Hawkwing, who was this legendary hero from an earlier age. He's like pretty much the Wheel of Time, sort of King Arthur, if you will. And at this point in the age they're living in, he's this sort of larger than life, sort of legendary person. But his son had taken a bunch of their army and sailed across the ocean and founded what's turned into the Seanchan Empire these thousands of years later. And it was basically an Aes Sedai who was there, who invented the Adam, because he didn't, Arthur's son didn't trust Aes Sedai, because without the oaths, there were no 3 oaths yet, I think, back then. The Aes Sedai were powerful and could wield the one power to seize power over people, and it was a problem. So an Aes Sedai created the Adam to basically collar women who could channel so their power could be used to the Empire's advantage, but would never be a threat against the Empire. And they eventually collared the Aes Sedai who invented this collar and bracelet system herself. And they don't really go into all that too much in this episode, but they do say that, Rena does say it was an Aes Sedai who originally created them. They just, in this conversation in the book, Rena gives you much more of that backstory about how they came to be and who it was and why and all that stuff. And there's so much more to Egwene and Rena's interaction as damane and Suldam. And again, it's just a couple of scenes and just a couple of chapters in that second book. But Robert Jordan conveys so much in just those few scenes and just those few chapters. And they're doing as much as they can here in this show. These scenes with Egwene and Rena, the damane and Suldam dynamic, are really well done here in the show. And they're doing as much as they can in the very limited screen time they have here in this episode. And they're doing a really good job. I will just say this, everything you're seeing Egwene suffer in this episode, this is just a taste of what Egwene goes through. Because take this and then have this, like this, nonstop to Egwene for weeks. This is what she's been suffering in the books, because she's been in captivity for weeks at this point in the book. So this is very mellow compared to what Egwene's been going through, and some of the things she thinks about, like in her chapter, like of the torture she's been enduring all this time. And then we have some of what Egwene's going through, we see through the eyes of Min. Because like I mentioned earlier in this live stream, Min is with them in the book. So Egwene and Min are captured. Min is made a servant and allowed to visit Egwene once a week. And some of those scenes with Min and Egwene it's from Min's point of view. And so we're seeing Egwene internally suffering and dealing with this experience, and we're seeing Min like just watching Egwene from the outside and seeing what it's doing to Egwene and what she's going through. And I will just say that Egwene this is a very powerful experience for Egwene in these books that shapes her going forward, where she has a very different relationship with the One Power because of this experience. In many ways to her benefit later, in some ways not to her benefit later, but there's so much that Egwene in the book learns about herself here in these scenes, even though it's just a short little part of this second book, that are so critical to the journey Egwene is going to take in the whole rest of the story. because there are things she's going to deal with and suffer later that this time as a damane is preparing her for, and she just doesn't know it. And they're doing a great job, and the actress is just knocking it out of the park as Egwene. I'm looking forward now to this actress getting to do those things Egwene is going to do later in this story, because she's showing me here, when it comes to her acting talent, that she's going to be fantastic as she gets deeper into this role. And she's one of the highlights. Her and the actress playing Ryma, the Yellow Aes Sedai. Those two are the stars of this episode by far. And, Rhaena is talking to Egwene here, and she's telling her, the Aes Sedai, that White Tower, they hold you back. They're so afraid of the power. And they handcuff you, and they keep you, just to teach you parlor tricks. They teach you what they think you need to know to scare people with tricks. But a damane learns how to wield the one power. You will learn how to wield this to the fullest extent you're capable of. Of course, at our discretion and will and command. But we're going to teach you not to be afraid of this power. So to embrace it and do everything you can with it. So it's a very eye-opening experience. And Egwene is realizing, and this is a bit more of a dynamic in Egwene's internal sort of like thoughts in the chapters. She's realizing that these damane can do things the like very, very experienced Aes Sedai never could have even dream or think of doing. And these damane are operating at a very different level, a level much more advanced even than some of the very experienced Aes Sedai, because it's just a completely different mental approach to the one power that these two different groups have. So, and this is what Egwene is beginning to learn here in this episode as well. She's seeing the difference. And Rhaena takes Egwene over to the window and has her, they're linked together, and she's teaching Egwene the difference in how the one power feels to a damane who's linked with the bracelet and the collar to her sul'dam. And when they're in sync, how much better the one power feels when she touches it and uses it. And you can see Egwene like sort of being startled by how it does feel, and sort of having this internal battle, because Egwene is desperate to learn how to channel. This is something she's been desperate to learn since she came to the White Tower. And one of her frustrations there was how slow the tower takes everything. So she's one of those people who just has a thirst to learn as much of the one power as she can. And this is a dangerous place for her to be in, because she's like, her will to be free and her will to master the one power are kind of at war with each other here to a degree. And again, there's, I think, a bit more of this in the books than in the TV show, but the actress is doing a really good job of conveying this sort of dynamic that she's kind of having to deal with here. Getting to do what she wants to do, finally, with the one power, but under the worst possible circumstances. And Rhaena has Egwene kind of reach out and feel the roots of the tree that's in the courtyard, and then go up into the tree and then heat it, and then to such a degree that the tree just bursts into flames. And she's like very proud of Egwene. And then she takes that cup, puts it on the floor, and turns to Egwene and says, "Pour me a cup of water from the pitcher," kind of thing. And then Egwene tries to go to the pitcher again and is immediately racked in pain, because in Egwene's mind, that pitcher's a weapon that she can use to try to get free. And Rhaena's disappointed. And it's like, you will learn that there is no weapon. A damane has no weapon when it comes to the sul'dam. The damane is the sul'dam's weapon, and that's all you will be. And she just basically kicks Egwene, And Gwen's on the ground, and she just starts repeatedly kicking her, repeatedly, like punishing her physically this time instead of with the one power, and then leaves, just disappointed in her failures. And then we're back to Nynaeve and Elyane. And, Nynaeve wants Elyane, like I don't know if I covered this already in this episode, but Nynaeve wants Elyane to go. Like whatever escape route the Ryma, the Aes Sedai has put together, use it. Get out of here. Get back to the White Tower. Warn them. You're the daughter heir. You have all these other responsibilities. You shouldn't be here. And Elaine's like, oh, so now I'm the daughter heir of Andor when you can use it against me. So no, I'm staying. Egwene's my friend. And Nynaeve is asking her, because you realize in the TV show here, Nynaeve and Elyane don't know each other. They just met like 5 minutes before Liandrin like knocked them out and took them here and turned them over to the Seanchan. So they don't have any kind of friendship really in the TV show, because their dynamic is different, because Elyane kind of shows up in the second episode of season 2. She's just showing up now to start her training and kind of catch up. So Nynaeve hasn't had an opportunity to even get to know Elyane. So she's really with this stranger in her eyes and just getting to know Elyane now. And she just doesn't understand. It's like, what? You barely know Egwene either. So why do you care? Like, why are you here? And why are you risking yourself and risking the future of your queendom for a woman you barely know? And Elyane is telling her, it's like, she's my friend, and I've never had one of those before. So she matters to me. And I think it's a nice little moment between the two of them, because it's a good thing for Nynaeve to see that, that Elyane actually is a person of honor as well. It's not just a spoiled brat, but Elyane actually legitimately, genuinely, deeply cares. Which I think, again, we're seeing the sort of friendship that can be contentious between these two women, like forming here, because like Nynaeve has respect now, more respect for Elyane, realizing that this is what friendship means and how much it matters to her. But then again, such a short little scene, and then we're back to Rand and Mat. And Mat wants to know, okay, where is everybody? Where's Perrin? Where's Egwene? Where's Nynaeve? And Rand has pretty much been telling him, it's like, what happened at the Eye of the World, and he let them think he was dead because he felt if he was away from them, they'd be safer, but now he realizes that was wrong. And Rand tells Mat that Ishamael has Egwene in Falm, and Gwen's in trouble, and he knows it's a trap, and he shouldn't go, but he has to go because that's Egwene. And Mat's like, all right, let's go. We're going. We're not going to abandon Egwene. She's two rivers, we got to stand together kind of stuff. And this is Mat. Mat will bitch and moan and complain in the books about not wanting to do something, and then he'll do it because it's the honorable thing to do, because that's who Mat is in the books. He's a rascal, yes. He can be annoying, yes. He can be afraid sometimes, yes. But in the end, he does what honor tells him to do. He does what friendship tells him to do. He does what those bonds tell him to do. And he'll bitch and moan all along the way, and every moment looking for a way out, but still manages to do what needs to be done. And he's such a great character in the books. Once he gets past the Shadow Logoth dagger, which this TV show is hopefully bringing him past with this season. So I still don't know where they're going with him. TV show Mat, they've multiple times implied was born with the darkness in him. Not a fan of that. Hope they're not going that route, to be honest, but we'll see. But so Mat's like, okay, look, we got to go rescue her, but give me an hour. Meet me at the gate in an hour. I got to go break a girl's heart, which is kind of a Mat thing to say. And he goes off. And then Mat goes to see Min, and Min is in her room, like drinking, upset. And he tells her that he ran into Rand. And she's like, look, you can't go with him. You're going to kill him. I saw you in a vision killing Rand. If you go with him, you're going to kill him. And he realizes, well, wait a minute, how do you even know who Rand is? Because remember, Matt didn't come with them to Faldara in season 1 of this TV show. Now, obviously, book Matt knows that Min knows Rand because they all met in Berlon in the first book. But TV show Matt doesn't know that they've met each other. And he realizes that she's been using him. And then realizes that she's been using him the entire time. She was only pretending to be like another prisoner of Liandrin's. And Matt's like deeply, deeply hurt here because, friendship means so much to Matt. And Matt, TV show Matt is, I guess, has this sort of guilt at abandoning his friends. So, which he doesn't do in the books. He didn't do in book 1, but that's what happened in TV show season 1 because the actor left and all sorts of stuff. But I like Donald Finn here in Matt in this episode. He's getting to finally do things this season rather than just sit in the same room for 4 episodes. So it's good to see him actually getting to interact with people and have emotional scenes to play. He's getting to show a bit more of his Matt and how he's going to play the character and how Matt feels about friendships and betrayals and trust and all these things. And I guess how TV show version of Matt, having done some of that, it impacts him more now that it's being done to him, that sort of betrayal and mistrust and everything. So I'm curious to see where they're going to go with it. I just want to get book Matt to finally show up at some point, write the character the way he is in the books. Because Matt is starting next season, if it's book 4, Matt goes on a journey, and it really begins big time in that 4th book. So we'll see. We'll see where they go this season. There's only 2 more episodes. If Matt does in this finale what he does in the book finale, I'll feel much better about the direction they're taking this character. If they take his book 2 finale away from him and give it to somebody else, then I'm not going to have high hopes for what they're going to do to this character in the show. But we'll see. We'll see. We still have 2 episodes to go to find that out. But Min is telling him, it's like, you cannot go with Rand. So, because you'll kill him if you do. I've seen it, and I can't let that happen to him. So we cut away to Moiraine. And now Moiraine has finally written her letter. She's handed it to some servant in the house to deliver to the Blue Ajah. And then she goes to see Barthanes, her nephew, and apologizes to him. She's finally she's telling him, it's like, you're a good man with a good heart, and you'll be a good king. Because he's going to be marrying, because Carrion has a queen in this TV show instead of a king. And Barthanes is supposedly going to be marrying the queen and becoming the king, I guess, rule with her or whatever. It was something I just briefly mentioned a couple of episodes ago. We haven't seen that whole aspect of this city because we've been mostly in the Foregate or in the Damodred house, and that's it. We haven't seen the rest of the city. We see much more of it in the book, in those couple of chapters where Rand is there. But this is a very different Barthanes. And, but, she's reaching out and showing compassion, and Barthanes gives her a hug, which is probably the first hug Moiraine has had, and who knows how the hell long, probably since she snuck off to have some fun with Swan in season 1 there. But even though this is obviously a very platonic family relative hug, but still, Moiraine getting affection shown to her is like a weird thing. But then Anver, her sister, shows up and tells her that the Amarylline Seed has come, and she demands an audience with Moiraine. And then we switch back to the Amarylline Seed arriving here. She's arrived at Carrion, and she gets out of her carriage, and hey, there's Liandrin. Liandrin is somehow there in Carrion now. I mean, we saw Liandrin earlier in the episode in Tar Valon, where Lanfear showed up and killed Liandrin's elderly son. And now somehow the Amerlin has shown up, grabbed 14 Aes Sedai, brought them with her to Carian. And Leandrin is the one remarking on that. She says, well, the last time an Amerlin showed up with 14 Aes Sedai in tow in Carian, a new king was crowned. And that's Leandrin trying to figure out, okay, why, what's going on? Why are we all here? And the Amerlin just kind of makes, maybe I'm just a more frivolous Amerlin. Think nothing of it kind of thing. But I guess technically there is a king about to be crowned. If Parthenis is going to be marrying the queen, he's going to become a king, I guess. Or a king consort or whatever. I don't know how the rules work in this TV show Wheel of Time when it comes to people sharing power and stuff. Because, again, in the book, Carian is a king. And here in the show, Carian apparently has a queen. But this is a whole hell of a lot of Aes Sedai. And I'm trying to remember, is 14 the amount of Aes Sedai that is needed in the books to basically shield and gentle a male channeler? Because I think that's what it takes to actually gentle Logain in the books, even though that happens off page. So the Amerlin has come with just the right amount of people that if she's going to capture the Dragon Reborn and gentle him, she's brought the exact amount of Aes Sedai with her to do that. And I would think the show would find a way to slip mention of that in. Hopefully that's going to be mentioned in the next episode, that's a possibility of what the Amerlin might have come here to do, or at least to give Rand the impression, or maybe someone or Lanfear or someone will tell Rand that's what that 14 Aes Sedai mean. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But that's it. The Amerlin's there. So she's arrived in Carian. So pretty much anyone who's not already in Falme on this show is now in Carian at this point. And we're back to Nynaeve and Elyane. And this we get to pretty much the finale of the episode here. And these scenes bounce back and forth between Egwene and Rena over here doing the damane Suldam stuff, and Ryma, the Yellow Ajah Aes Sedai, and Nynaeve and Elyane trying to work out how the Adam, the collar and stuff works. So we have Ryma and Elyane are channeling very softly again. They're trying to figure it out. And Ryma is like asking Nynaeve to help, because Nynaeve has a block, so she can really only channel when she's furious, when she's angry. But Ryma's been talking to her and just kind of telling her, because again, if you just say the right words, they can just magically channel. So Nynaeve is able to touch the source, and then all of a sudden there's just like pulse of power from Nynaeve, and it's too much because she doesn't really have any control over it, because she only channels when she's angry, for the most part, with rare exceptions in this TV show. But Nynaeve says it wants to be healed, and the only way it can be healed if it's placed around the neck of someone who can channel. It's the only way it will feel complete, and it can't be broken, she's saying. And there's a banging that they hear, and it's the water. And Ryma realizes the damane have come. They found her. So she tells Nynaeve and Elyane to stay here, do absolutely nothing to reveal yourselves. No matter what happens, you cannot be caught. And she gives the 3 Aes Sedai rings to them, and then she takes her own ring off, and she's like giving it to Nynaeve. And Nynaeve's like, I can't take that. And she's like, can I trust you to take my ring and bring it back to the fire in Tar Valon, that sort of table with the flames where they melt the rings down? And she's like, can I trust you? Will you do this for me? And then Nynaeve finally relents and says, okay. And then they stay there, and Ryma goes out to confront, with her water, to confront the damane. And she knows she's expecting to die pretty much in this scene. But she just wants to take as many of them with her and do it in a way where they're only just concentrating on her. They're not even looking for anybody else, because she's what they felt, and to make sure Elaine and Nynaeve don't get caught. And we have this like knockdown, drag out fight where we get to see an Aes Sedai in action in this season, and she's facing off against multiple damane and Suldam, and she's not really holding back here. So she burns the face of one of the Suldam controlling one of the damane, just like her face is just like burning from the inside and everything, because she's just trying to kill as many of these people. Because in this instance where her life is imperiled, she can use the one power in this way. The oaths allow it. Under this is one of the exceptions where she can do this. And while this is happening, Nynaeve and Elyane are watching helpless, and then it's switching back and forth over to Egwene, being like punished over and over by Rhaena because she can't pick up the pitcher and pour the water. And, you know, Rhaena is like drilling it into Egwene's head. Like, that pitcher and that cup, that's your world. That's it. That's the only thing that exists in your world, is that pitcher and that cup. Until you learn to see that pitcher as just a pitcher of water, and only a pitcher of water, and not a weapon. It could never be a weapon until you can accept that moment. You'll never be able to touch that pitcher, and you'll never not be in pain. And your world will just be that pitcher and that cup and you and nothing else until you can overcome this. And it's back to, you know, seeing this fight with Ryma and the damane and her water. And she gets to the point where she realizes, okay, she's done all she can do at this point, and she's asking her water to end her life for her, because she can't end her own life. And her water is like, I can't do it. And she's like, you have to. And when he goes to kill Ryma so she can't be captured, one of the other damane just like basically pierces him with these like almost like a blade of the one power itself, like this sort of translucent power, just comes out of his chest. He's basically impaled with it and dies. And she and Ryma loses it because, you know, just these waves of uncontrollable grief wash over an Aes Sedai when their water is killed. Same as what happens to a warder when their Aes Sedai is killed. We saw that in season 1. And she takes the one power and she twists these weaves, and she takes the damane and the Suldam who killed her water, and she just crumples them up, like folds them up like paper, and kills the two of them. It's pretty horrific the way she does it. And then she kind of falls down grief-stricken by her water, and the collar is put around her neck. And she's just screaming in pain and grief and terror. And this actress just steals the entire episode. Just what a performance by her. And this is why they made this change in this TV show. Like I said, she was already a captured damane in the books when Egwene is taken. But it makes sense to have her captured here instead in the scene, because we've now seen a powerful, very experienced Aes Sedai in battle, in full, it's life or death. And you see the power she has and the power she can wield. And I think it's setting the bar for what's to come later. Because the obvious is, at some point, Nynaeve is going to have this confrontation. You know this is coming, that Nynaeve and Elyane are going to have this confrontation themselves with these Seanchan. So what I like about this scene is it sets this power bar with this Aes Sedai, so that we can then see Nynaeve later, when Nynaeve channels and has presumably a similar confrontation is going to have to come because they're going to have to make their move to rescue Egwene. You're going to see the levels of power that Nynaeve can wield. And I think that's one of the reasons probably why they made this change from the books and had Ryma still a free Aes Sedai and only now getting captured. One, it raises the stakes in the TV show and shows you a force that the damane and Suldam are to be reckoned with. And the drawbacks of how the Aes Sedai use the One Power and the rules and the limitations they put on themselves. While it helps the world or society, because it does keep a level of what they could do from happening. And but in situations like this, it gets them captured and collared. Whereas if they weren't bound the way they're bound, she'd be able to do what they're doing to her with at will. So it's a really interesting dynamic in this TV show to see, and it's smart to include her here, even though this is not in the books, but this is a change that works well and fits in the show, because it really shows the audience a lot and shows the difference between the not necessarily power levels, but how the One Power is used. When it's used mostly in a positive way and rarely in a way like this, and when someone whose every moment of their training is, I am a weapon and I will use this weapon to my fullest, you see the difference and the challenge that the Aes Sedai are going to face if more and more of these Seanchan come to this continent. And Rhaena is punishing an Egwene over and over in the room, and she picks Egwene up and like hangs Egwene off on the hook on the wall, like it's hooked into the part of the back of her collar where she put the chain on her before, and it's like choking Egwene, and she's barely able to breathe. And then she finally picks Egwene back up and throws her down and commands her again, pour the water. And Egwene just crawls over to the pitcher and starts reaching out for it and realizes she can touch it, and then pours a cup of water, and she gives it, stands up and gives it to Rhaena, and then Rhaena basically just pours it out on the floor and goes, good girl, and like touches her on the head, I think, like, and then leaves. So, and then Egwene just like, as soon as the door closes, Egwene rushes to the pitcher because she's been dying of thirst because she hasn't been able to touch it or drink any water herself. So she's just guzzling water down, and then just starts screaming and crying because she realized that she broke, that this woman broke her, and she's not handling it very well at this point. And you hear the other damane in the other room telling her it's okay, you know? It's like, you lasted longer than I did, child, and I was a sitter of the Blue Ajah. And then you see it is that Blue Ajah we saw in the White Tower in season 1, was one of the Aes Sedai who was captured earlier and broke a lot quicker than Egwene has. And then Egwene has this really interesting expression on her face at the end here, where it's a combination of a lot of different things. It's a realization that she did break, and I think a determination that she's not going to stay broken. And the actress really, it's a very interesting look, and it's a complex look. And then that's how the episode ends. And again, this stuff with Egwene and going through the damane, like torture training and everything with Rhaena, the Suldam, great stuff. All this with Nynaeve and Elyane sort of feeling each other out and beginning to get to know each other as two women and finding a way to start being able to become friends, and then interacting with the Aes Sedai, the Yellow Ajah, Nynaeve, very important. And all that really good stuff, even though that's a different dynamic than the Nynaeve, Elyane stuff in this part of the book. It works really, really well for the show. Really great stuff. And then, like I said, As the World Turns soap opera nonsense with Ilana and her waters and land, and then Moiraine and her sister Anver, which just drags that part of this episode down. So this could have been like a 9 out of 10 episode, but I think probably like a 7.5 episode for me overall. This stuff is really great over here, and then you have just nonsense over here. And I wish they would do less and less of this nonsense. I'm hoping once we close out this Karian stuff in season 2, we can overall just start getting more into what everyone should be doing in the book. Especially, again, if next season is going to be book 4, The Shadow Rising, the show does have a sort of reset opportunity, because everyone kind of needs to be next season where they need to be in that book. And so they have an opportunity to begin to bring more and more book things in for the characters who should be doing book things who aren't. But the stars of this episode were Egwene and Ryma, the Yellow Ajah, Aes Sedai. But here's some quick takeaways for this episode for me, just to wrap this up here. Like I mentioned, it does look like the show is taking some elements of Semirhage and giving them to Lanfear. So I don't think we're getting Semirhage at all in terms of the Forsaken in this show. And maybe Lanfear is going to actually dress in white like she's supposed to. And like I've already covered, I don't know why the hell Ingtar's there. What an absolute, utter, complete waste of a really, really important, interesting Book 2 character to just totally waste in this season. And I'm curious to how in the hell they're going to get Min into Min's actual book plot story in this TV show. Because she's so far off from what she should be doing in these books. Again, she's another one like Matt and Rand and Moiraine and Lan, where this is all just made up claptrap for them. And I'm just curious as to how they're going to take Min from here and get her to where she needs to be in the books. And I'm hoping, assuming, Min is going to be coming to Falme as well, because there's a particular scene in Book 2 near the end between basically it's really between Min and Egwene that involves Rand. That's a very important moment. Even though it's a quiet, short little moment, it's a super important moment in the dynamic of all of these characters in that second book. And I'm not sure how this show's going to... I hope this show does that scene, because, again, it's a really, really important moment, as small and short as it is, where, let's just say, Min is sitting there kind of sort of cradling Rand, and Egwene comes into the room, and Min and Egwene have a conversation. And basically an understanding. Min like lays the kind of law down on what the dynamic is. And I don't know how the hell this show is going to do that scene with what they've been doing with Min in this TV show. So we'll see. I don't know. Hopefully that scene, they find a way for that scene to still happen, because it is a pretty important moment, especially for Egwene. It's kind of an eye-opener for Egwene to basically, Min is like, cut your shit, woman. Leave the guy alone kind of stuff. And it's something that Egwene needs to be said, particularly in this TV show as well, that Egwene needs to hear, and needs to hear from Min. But Min and Egwene don't have any relationship in this TV show, because Min isn't there in Falme with Egwene, being Egwene's only sort of companion still, to even have the dynamic where that little moment can even happen the way it happened. So, again, I don't know. This show keeps putting itself in these situations completely unnecessarily, where they're taking away the ability to do like these small, short, but very important moments in the books. And we'll see. 2 episodes to go. We'll see if that happens. I hope it does. Again, it's one of my favorite moments in the second book. It's so brief. It's just a quick 15 seconds at the most. But I thought it was, for me, such an important moment in terms of the relationship, just in terms as friends, and in other ways. So we'll see. But I hope that Rand and Matt get to spend a whole lot of time together next season, like they should. We'll see. The kind of important dynamic in this whole book is Rand and Matt and their friendship and the places that gets taken to. So I hope, they should have been together most of the season and they weren't. So, but I've already gone over that. And hopefully we hear whether the Amyrlin was in Camelin and why, or where she's been, and kind of weird for her to just kind of pop up out of nowhere. And we're just ignoring how the hell everyone gets to Carrion from wherever they are so quick, with like a blink of an eye. I mean, everyone shows up in Carrion and the time it takes Rand to just take a little nap. And I'm curious to see how the show is going to have Egwene take away what she needs to take away from this damane experience. And what it teaches her about how the White Tower teaches and trains people. So I'm curious. I'm worried about the writing ability on this show to take things in the right direction. But this episode, and even the last episode a little bit, we got to see that there are some people writing on this show who do have talent and can deliver when you let them, when you get out of their way and let them just tell book stuff. But we'll see. I'm just curious to see how the show is going to take that dynamic of what Egwene's learning here and how that's going to impact her relationship in the TV show with the White Tower. And here's an interesting thing that we did not get yet in this episode. The scene with the tree is in the book, but there's another scene where Egwene realizes that she has an affinity when it comes to earth, like manipulating earth-related elements with the One Power. Because like I said, in the TV show, it presents it as though they're sucking the One Power out of the earth, which is not the case in the actual books. Aes Sedai just have certain talents to manipulate different elemental things just with the One Power. And Egwene realizes she has an affinity for earth. Like she's able to sense like ore, like an ore mine. That's an old abandoned ore mine that no one even knows, you can't even really see is there, which is a rare skill apparently among the damane and makes Egwene's value as a damane rise exponentially. And it's an interesting thing. Like, is this something that Egwene would have had an opportunity to learn at the White Tower, the way the White Tower takes them ever so slowly through the novice experience and just gradually getting you to manipulating with the One Power. So I'm curious, is this something she would have discovered about herself at this early stage if she had never ended up here with that collar on her, being put through this very different training experience as a damane? But we'll see. And I'm curious to see if we're going to hopefully get Ryma next episode as a damane, because Egwene and her have a sort of very briefly touched on dynamic in the books together. Like Egwene is telling Min about Ryma, who's been renamed Pura, I think. Or is it Pura? I think it's Pura, by her own Soldam. So I hope that actress gets more scenes this time now struggling as a damane. I'm curious to see if we're going to get that dynamic out of her. I hope so. But who knows? Who knows how this is going to go down? I'd have to look up to see. I can't remember what happens to poor Ryma in the books overall. I'd have to see. I have to go research that, but I just hope we get to see that dynamic. Anyway, it is 2.5 hours in. This has been a very rambly sort of live stream, way more kind of like rambly than I intended it to be. Yeah, so as I do more and more of these, hopefully these are going to get much more focused and streamlined, because I really don't want to spend 2.5 hours going over a 1 hour TV show episode. But that's just kind of how these are working out right now as I get into the flow of trying to do these live streams every Sunday night. And but hopefully next week's won't be 2.5 hours long, and it'll be much more focused, because I do feel like this one kind of got away from me a bit and was a bit more meandering than I wanted this sort of recap to be. But I will say this, overall, the stuff that was really good in this episode was really good, and the stuff that was really bad was like Days of Our Lives nonsense, and just cut that crap out, TV show, please. I have a live stream, you'll find it in the show notes down below, of me covering all the episodes of this season. It's getting quite long if you watch the whole playlist, though, you know, YouTube loves when people put a playlist on and play through, so like, subscribe, all the YouTube-y things. I'm getting close to 2,000 subscribers. I'll get there soon, hopefully. And I am, once the season's over, I'm going to do one more live stream of just season 2, where I'm going to just kind of do a post-mortem of the season. And hopefully it's not like 7 hours long. Hopefully it'll be a short one. But that said, a very mixed bag episode. Great stuff and not great stuff. But season 2 overall arcing better, trending better than season 1. It's just, like I said at the start of this whole thing, the things I like better about this season, the things I like about this season, I like better than the things I liked about season 1. The things I dislike about this season, I dislike a lot more than the things I disliked about season 1. So it's gone up in good ways and bad ways. But there are good signs here. And if we do get a much more book accurate season 3 and we get book 4, this show actually has a chance to become something really good. But there's somebody on this show that has a propensity for taking characters away from the things they need to be doing. And I just hope to see less and less of that. And that said, if you haven't read The Wheel of Time, go read it. It's one of the great fantasy series. Yes, it's a commitment worth every page, every hour you read. It's a story that nails its landing, and the last chapter, the last battle chapters are incredible, incredible, incredible storytelling. But I'm going to call it a night. So I will see you next Sunday. I'll probably have a video out during the week where I think I'm going to probably do a little deeper dive into book Matt versus TV show Matt here for book 2 Matt versus season 2 Matt, like I had with Rand and Carian in the books and Rand and Carian in the TV show in my mid-season check-in video. So I think I might do that. I've been kind of toying with that in my head. So look for that hopefully maybe by Wednesday or Thursday. And definitely I will see you here at 7:45 p.m. Eastern next Sunday for episode 7, which I think is Days to Mar. Good luck with showing the Game of Houses in that episode, but we'll see. I am Charles the Book Sage. Have a good night. And I always, 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 always forget to get my cursor right over end stream before I say my outro. So good night again.